Many years ago, in a distant village called Kala, lived an old farmer, Jalil, and his son Jamal. Jalil and Jamal moved from a distant village to start a fresh life after Jalil's wife passed away. When they arrived, Jalil bought a farmland from an elderly farmer who was no longer able to maintain it. Kala was a very fertile and prosperous village. Most of the residents were farmers, and the majority of the food in the entire region came from Kala. The land Jalil bought was one of the smallest farms in the whole area, so Jalil worked very hard to compete with the much bigger farms. Jalil grew all sorts of crops like yams, potatoes, tomatoes, maize, garlic, and many others. He also had a few cows, goats, and sheep. Jamal did not care about farming. He was never really interested in helping his father. He spent most of his days drinking, smoking, and chasing girls. Jalil and Jamal were neither rich nor poor. They lived a very modest life. Jalil was a wise and respected man. In the evenings, he would sit with Jamal and give him advice.
Jamal, my son, you need to think about your life. You can't keep drinking and chasing girls all day. It won't lead you anywhere.
Jamal would nod, but he didn't really listen. He was thinking about meeting his friends at the tavern. "Daddy, you worry too much. I have plenty of time to figure things out."
Time waits for no one, Jamal. I won't be here forever to guide you,
Jalil replied, looking worried. Jamal did not see the wisdom in his father's words. He always dismissed him as an old man rambling along. Jalil was always very kind to the villagers. He was respected and loved, always ready to offer a helping hand or advice. Over the next few years, the situation in Kala began to change. The once lush fields started to turn brown as the rains gradually reduced until they completely stopped. The vibrant green that had defined the village faded, replaced by a dusty, parched landscape. The sun beat down relentlessly, cracking the earth and withering the crops. Very soon, the farmers lost their livelihood and went into poverty, barely affording enough for a meal. The only farmer that wasn't affected was Jalil. You see, the land Jalil bought was on top of a hill, overlooking the rest of Kala, and was unaffected by the drought in Kala. Jalil's land got rain and sunshine, and it became 100 times more fertile than it was before. Jalil had vast herds of cattle grazing the golden fields, expansive plots of maize swaying under the sun, and could afford the finer things in life. While the rest of Kala suffered, Jalil prospered. People would come from other villages to buy food from Jalil, and this made him very, very rich. Jalil was a fair and kind man. He knew that he needed to help those in the community that were struggling. So he hired many members of the community to meet the demand. As a result, Jalil was able to increase production dramatically. He built a big container where he stored the grain, just in case the prosperity that he experienced stopped. Jalil always tried to advise his son to pay close attention to the farming business, and would sit him down always and tell him to make sure the container was always full when he was gone. Jamal would dismiss his dad and go out drinking and talking to girls. He did more of this because there was more money. One morning, when Jalil was in the field, he had a heart attack and died. Someone from the field ran to find Jamal in the town square and found him boasting to a woman about how he could buy everything in the tavern. All she had to do was come back home with him. The worker, with sadness in his eyes, said, "Mr. Jabal, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I don't have good news. Your father has passed away." Jalil left the entire farm business and all his wealth to Jamal, instantly making Jamal Kala's most eligible bachelor. This made Jamal even prouder and more arrogant than he ever was. Jamal bought the most expensive clothes, made from the rarest and most exquisite fabrics imported from distant lands. He strutted through the village with an air of superiority, looking down on everyone and treating his staff and the community members badly. One day, as Jamal was returning from a trip to the tavern, he saw an old, frail man sitting by the roadside. The man's clothes were tattered, and his eyes reflected the hardship he had endured. Jamal, in his usual manner, looked down on the old man and scoffed. "Why do you sit here in the dust, old man? Have you no pride, no ambition? If you were anything like me, you would not be in such a pitiful state." The old man looked up at Jamal with a calm, knowing smile, and he said, "Pride goes before the fall," in a very soft voice, barely above a whisper. Jamal laughed mockingly. "You this old man, do you know who I am?" "I'm Jamal, the wealthiest and most desirable man in Kala. I have no time for your cryptic sayings." With that, Jamal walked away, leaving the old man behind. He did not notice the look of sadness and pity in the old man's eyes. Jamal was very mean to his workers, barking orders and never showing any appreciation for their hard work. He believed his wealth and status entitled him to treat others as inferior. The staff, who had respected and loved Jalil, grew resentful of Jamal's arrogance and harshness. Every week, Jamal threw lavish feasts and only invited the most influential people in all the village, while shunning those he deemed unworthy. The long wooden tables groaned under the weight of roasted meats, exotic fruits, flowing palm wine. The air was filled with laughter and music, and beneath the surface there was growing discontent among those who worked for him. At one of those feasts, a beautiful woman called Aman locked eyes with Jamal. Jamal approached her. "How do you like this party?" Jamal said. "It has to be one of the best parties I've ever attended," she said. "This is actually the least of what I have. Stick with me and I'll show you wealth beyond your wildest dreams," Jamal said. What Jamal didn't know was that Aman was a notorious gold digger who always attached herself to the wealthiest men. Aman flattered him so much that Jamal was blinded to the reality of his situation. Late that night, when the party had ended, he was alone in his grand house. It was so silent he could hear a pin drop. He wandered through the empty halls and thought about his father and some of the things he told him. But he thought to himself, "I have everything I need. My life is perfect." Jamal's neglect of the business created opportunities for some workers to take advantage of the situation. They began stealing funds slowly. Knowing that Jamal was too distracted to notice, the once efficient farm started to decline, and Jamal's mismanagement took its toll. The container, which Jalil had consistently kept full, was rarely refilled. Jamal dismissed his father's practices as old-fashioned and unnecessary. Meanwhile, the drought in Kala began to lessen. The rains returned and the land started to flourish once more. The farmers who had once worked for Jalil and then Jamal began to leave to tend to their own lands and rebuild their own farms. As the rest of Kala began to prosper, Jamal's land suffered. He didn't have enough staff to work the land, and years of mismanagement had taken their toll. The crops failed, the livestock dwindled, and the once abundant container was empty. Jamal didn't have the knowledge and skills his father had possessed, and he couldn't reverse the farm's decline. He had wasted his wealth and alienated those who might have helped him. In desperation, Jamal tried to find work on other farms, but no one would accept him. The villagers knew he had no real farming skills and resented his previous arrogance and mistreatment. Jamal, once the wealthiest and most arrogant man in Kala, found himself very poor. All his so-called friends, including Aman, abandoned him now that he didn't have any money, and he was fully alone. Eventually, Jamal became a beggar, sitting on the corner of the road in his worn expensive clothes, begging for money. The once fine fabrics were now tattered and dirty, a stark contrast to his previous opulence. He watched as villagers who had once looked up to him now walked past him with pity in their eyes. The women who had flocked to him for his wealth were long gone, having moved to their next wealthy targets. The once vibrant village square, filled with the scents of fresh bread and the sounds of children playing, now felt like a place of humiliation for Jamal. One day, as he sat on the roadside, an old man approached him and sat beside him. The old man looked at him with a mixture of sadness and compassion.
Jamal, do you remember me?
Tears welled up in Jamal's eyes at the realization that it was the same old man he had mocked years ago.
Yes, I do.
I'm so sorry for how I treated you all those years. I was foolish, proud and arrogant. I didn't appreciate what I had or the people who helped me. I lost everything. The old man nodded.
It's not too late to start over, Jamal. I actually knew your father, Jalil. You were not around when I sold him my farmland, the one you inherited.
Jamal was shocked.
Yes, I know you didn't expect that. During the drought, I ran out of money, and because I was unable to work, eventually I found myself on the street, just like you.
So how were you able to turn things around?
When things improved, a group of farmers contributed enough funds for my needs, and here I am. The main thing for you to know is that there is always still hope. You might not have work for you now, but if you remain humble and work hard, things will change. Your father's legacy wasn't just his wealth, it was his kindness and wisdom. Don't forget that.
Jamal knew he was right. He had a long journey ahead to rebuild his life, not through wealth or status, but through earning back the respect and trust of those he had wronged. The lessons he had learned were hard, but were necessary. Although it took some time, Jamal eventually found a modest job, helping on one of the smaller farms. He worked diligently, no longer seeking wealth or status, but content with the satisfaction of honest labor and the respect of his community. And with those skills he learned, he was able to return to his father's farm and slowly start rebuilding. Jamal's story reminds us of the scripture in Proverbs that says, "Pride comes before destruction, and an arrogant spirit before a fall." It warns us of how excessive pride and arrogance can lead to ruin. Despite his inherited wealth and status, his disrespect for others and lack of humility caused his downfall. The story also teaches us that material wealth is fleeting and can be lost if not wisely managed. The story emphasizes the importance of hard work and humility. Jalil's success was built on these values, while Jamal's neglect and arrogance led to failure. If you enjoyed this story, please like, subscribe, comment and share for more African folk tales. Until next time.